Welcome everyone to this sessions in July, right, 2023 of Spiritual Questions Answered. If you don't know me, my name is Kat, K-E-T Kat of CordyKet, and those who know us, we are involved in spirituality and subtle energy since 2010. Just a very brief introduction. If you want to find out more about us, you can go to our website, just cordyket.com. There's a lot of videos on these spiritual questions answered under youtube.com. You can also find us on Facebook, all right? Just search CordyKet, right? That's CordyKet. So I'd like to jump straight in. The title, right, the subject for tonight's spiritual questions answered is sex and spirituality. All right, sex and spirituality. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type out on the chat. All right, and I will address your questions. And meanwhile, I will also be sharing, the usual style. I'll be sharing a little about sex and spirituality, and I will address all your questions. All right. So, firstly, I thought that this is a question that would be interesting for everyone because now and then I do get people asking me about this. They ask me like, usually privately. All right. So far, it's all privately, never out in the open, right? They ask me about how the spirituality, the spiritual path affect sex or sex life, and other, more kind of private questions. So I hope that by doing this video, you guys can just watch the video without having to ask me. All right, so first of all, to clarify, I'm not, while I'm a spiritual person and I'm a spiritual teacher of sorts, I don't belong to any traditional religious path. All right, so definitely I'm not a monk or a priest, and I'm not bound by any religious rules with regards to sexuality or sexual practices. And those of you who know, right, I'm married to my partner, all right, Cordelia. All right, so she's Cordy, I'm Kat, so together we're known as CordyKet, and we do this work together. So we are married and we have a son, all right? So clearly, right, we had sex and we have sex, right? So some people will kind of ask that kind of question, and it's not a question that you get to ask monks or priests who are supposed to be celibate, okay? So if you guys have questions of your own, please feel free to type. Now, so firstly, let's clarify. All right, I'm not celibate. I am a person who's on the spiritual path, and I'm married. I have a child. We have a son. So we pretty much do. I pretty much do have sex. But the question is, how does how does sex and spirituality intertwine kind of thing? So I'm going to start from a very early, my first experience, right, when it comes to sex and spirituality. So long ago, before I got into the spiritual path, I was just a regular guy, all right, working. At the time, I was working in Singapore. I'm now based in Malaysia. I was working in Singapore and I got depressed, and I tried to, I was so severely depressed that I tried to kill myself. Didn't succeed. All right, and eventually I moved back to Malaysia. So I went through this period of severe depression. All right, suicidal, and then I came back to Malaysia. I snapped out of it. All right, I snapped out of it while I was in Singapore. And I came back to Malaysia. I needed to, stop working because a huge part of the reason of depression was my job, which gave me a lot of stress, right? And I decided to quit my job and quit Singapore and come back to Malaysia. And because I was so depressed that I tried to, end my life, that I thought I needed to explore into spirituality seriously. I need to dive into spirituality because while I was so I was depressed and suicidal, and I felt that life had no meaning for me. I felt that life had no meaning for me, so I became I became, when I snapped out of my depression, the first thing that came to my mind is, I needed to find what is the meaning of life, what's the purpose of life. And my background was a Buddhist. All right, being a Buddhist, we believe in reincarnation. All right, we believe in reincarnation, and this central theme in Buddhism, reincarnation, karma, and the whole thing about trying to liberate oneself from the suffering of living. Because every time we live, when we live lives, we have suffering, and basically Buddha's teaching is revolves around suffering. How can we get out of suffering? So I asked myself existential questions like that. What's the meaning of life and everything? So I decided to dive head on into spirituality, and starting with Buddhism, and I began to um, read up more about other religions and find out more about spirituality. So I came back to Malaysia, and I dive head on into spirituality, and I began, I went to, I'm from Ipoh, all right, those of you, if you're Malaysia, I come from the town called, a city, all right, it's not a city, called Ipoh, all right, and we have a lot of limestone caves and hills, and in a lot of those limestone caves and hills, there are usually Buddhist temples, Buddhist or Taoist or Hindu temples, and I went to learn meditation from Buddhist monks in those hill temples, and I went to um, two of them. Right. Actually, in Singapore, I also took up some Buddhist meditation while I was in Singapore, but basically I moved back to Malaysia. So I got serious about meditation, and I read a lot into spirituality, and I devoted full time. I was very focused into spirituality. Okay, very very focused. I was just um, I was just trying to recover from my depression, trying to find the meaning of life, trying to understand the spirituality, different kinds of spirituality and religion. And in terms of work, it was not work and money was not a big concern. I just needed to work to make sure I could feed myself, and I had savings. So I spent a lot of time into spirituality. Now, this period of spirituality was very different for me because I was single. Okay, I was single at the time. I was single, all right, single young man, and at the time I was about 28, 29 years old when I came back to Malaysia. I was so serious into spirituality, right, and that I stopped masturbating. All right, so this is a little bit of private stuff, but I think everyone should know this. So I was so into spiritual stuff that I lost my sexual desire. All right, I lost my sexual desire, and my focus was just about spirituality, being a good person, meditation, and trying to understand the spiritual forces that are at play, the spiritual concepts that I lost. Lost my sexual desire, and I stopped masturbating. And this period lasted for the spiritual period lasted quite long, but I stopped masturbating for about 6 months. 6 months. All right. I remember about 6 months, half a year, roughly. So why I don't remember 6 months, half a year? So basically, I was being very spiritual. I think maybe about a year. All right. And so I stopped masturbating, and around 6 months or half a year, um, what began to happen, despite me not really, my sexual desire went down a lot because I was being very spiritual. Um, Mentally, I was okay, but physically, my body needed release. And what happened was I had wet dreams. I started to have wet dreams about half a year, roughly 6 months into after I stopped masturbating, and then I started to have wet dreams. I guess everyone knows what wet dreams are. Is where I ejaculated in bed. Just dreaming, and it's not the dreams are not of a sexual nature, but because I was a young I was a young man, 28, 29 years old. All right, and I was single. I was single and had no sexual partners. So the only way I could, had a sexual release is masturbate. And I stopped masturbating, but my body couldn't take it, and I started to have wet dreams whereby it's not a sexual nature. What happened was guys have morning erections. If you're healthy, you do get morning erections, and my sexual organs became very sensitive because for a long time there's no release, and I sleep with a bolster and some casual, there's some rubbing, and then I would ejaculate, and it's all a mess. And that happened roughly about 6 months. Happened a few times, and after that I realized that my body needs the release. So I went back into um, some masturbation. All right, and this is to share with you all. So that was my first phase of going through deep into spirituality to the point whereby I stopped masturbating. Okay, and now I am many years. That was in year 2004. Year 2004. All right, year 2004. So I went through this spiritual phase, but after that, I got out and just working and everything. And my next spiritual phase will be in 2010, right? 2010 until now, roughly 2010 until now. And the journey is very different. So those of you who know me, I'm both a spiritual teacher, energy healer, and now I've got we have this YouTube channel, and I run this talk every month, spiritual questions answered, and today's topic is sex and spirituality. So now, the next question that you all might want to ask is, what is this spirituality that I'm talking about? All right, what's this spirituality that I'm talking about? And how do I practice it? So you all will be wondering what are my practices, right? So now just to clarify with everyone, right? We are not religious. We are not religious, but we do not. It doesn't mean that we don't believe in religion. All right, we're not religious. That means Cordelia and I, we are not of just one faith. All right, but we do believe in religion. We believe in divine, and if you watch enough of videos, you know that we believe in the divine, and we help people deal with evil spirits, black magic, that kind of thing. So we help people deal with the forces of darkness. So we need the forces of light to be with us. So we're very much on a spiritual path that is not religious. Now, our path is really, a lot of it is about being a good person, all right? I think the simple way of saying it is being a good person. And I think spirituality and religion is, this is the core of what spirituality and religion is. It's about being a good person. And if I were to be very specific about it, how to be a good person would be based on values. All right, the values of the person. This is something that we focus on. Those people who are with us, if you are learning infinity with us, right? Or if you are students, or if you join us for our retreats and everything, right? You know that we talk a lot about values, right? So values is virtues, right? The things that you hold dear and important in life, right? Typically we talk about good values like love, compassion, kindness, that kind of thing, all right? Love, kindness, truth, so etc. All right, etc. So lots of stuff under here, values, and a key thing, right, that goes along with values in our practice of spirituality, right, is something that we call non-attachment. All right, we don't call it detachment, we call it non-attachment. All right, and we do, those of you who are on our monthly online free sessions, we have a non-attachment meditation, whereby I don't just teach the meditation, I talk about the philosophy of practicing this non-attachment. And values and non-attachment are very linked. So we need to practice values in a way that's non-attached. All right. So how do we be higher in terms of cultivation of values? We need to be more non-attached. So this is something very core in our kind of practice. This is our kind of spirituality. So not religious. Do we pray? Do we chant mantras and all that? So that can be done. All right. So we're not saying that that is no good. So this is essentially what I think what being spiritual is about. Now we in our spiritual path we also believe that there is a lot of work. When you talk about being a good person, there is a lot of what some people would call healing that needs to be done. Healing, cleansing that needs to be done. All right. So, and we need to reevaluate a lot of things with regards to our values. So there's a lot of introspection. That's what meditation is supposed to help you to do, right? You're supposed to gain, right? Because you do meditation. Meditation is one of our key practices, right? So meditation will bring about awareness and mindfulness. So we become more mindful, right? More aware of our own thoughts and emotions. So I think most spiritual practices is supposed to bring about this, especially if you're meditation, then you have this awareness and mindfulness. Now, so we go through a lot of cleansing and healing of ourselves, and this is to bring about self-improvement. All right, self-improvement, healing. For example, some of us we go through we may go through episodes in life whereby there are a lot of unhappiness. All right, if we go through a lot of some episodes in life whereby there's a lot of unhappiness, we can become a bitter person. All right, and in that sense, we would need to heal from the trauma of those experiences. We need some things to be cleansed from within our feelings of anger, resentment, depression, fear. All right, these are the kind of things that need to go. All right, we need to spend some time to do this. So this is the spiritual path as I see it. After having gone through this path, all right, and I occasionally people will ask me on the side privately. They'll ask like, "Hey, Kat, can I ask you something, about privately about sex on the spiritual path?" Because they know that Cordelia and I are married and we have a child, right? So we are not celibate or anything. And they say sure. And normally I will share. I am very willing to share. Now, so I will just put it straight out to you all. Okay, now if we are really spiritual, all right, if we're really spiritual and we do all this, it's going to affect our sex life. It's going to affect our perspectives about sex. All right, about sex in general. So, and this is something that I've gone through, and I'm sharing with you all. So, how has spirituality affected my sex life, my desire for sex, and all this? Now, you see, when we go through this, it makes us change as a person. Now, and sex is part of who we are, right? And now, if I were to be very honest with everyone, all right, what was sex like for me, the old me, right? Right, old me. Um, I'll just admit that I was a guy and I watched porn. All right, now, um, old me, sex, right? Old me, sex, the arousal and sexual arousal, the things that will arouse me sexually, um, and get for sex and all those things. It involved a lot of, for example, um, to me, it involves things that are not so good. I don't see them as so good. So, for example, all right, this is quite an adult topic, all right? I shall assume everyone who watch this are adults, and I'll put this video as not for kids, all right? Okay, the old me, all right? And I don't know about you all. I think for a lot of people, guys especially, we get sexually aroused, and maybe for females also, there's this element of subjugation, right? In sex, there's this element of subjugation. Do you know understand the term subjugation? That means you subject someone to, like, there's a power play here, right? There's power play, and it's usually sexual in nature. There's sexual power play whereby you would want someone to be subservient, or have to listen to your sexual demands, and you get aroused because of that, and that plays out a lot in pornographic scenario, right? And that's why people go into genres like BDSM, sadomasochism, those kind of thing. BDSM, B's, I think bestiality. Anyway, BDSM, all those are the real hardcore stuff. But for example, there's this subjugation thing. All right, I'm just gonna be adult. For example, people, guys, you know, maybe guys like to receive oral sex, right? And there's this thing about subjugation. You want the other partner to be under your power, sexual power, that kind of thing. And when there's sex, it's like it's like the guy is doing it to the lady, and you giving her good, that kind of thing. So there's this huge thing, and I lump it mostly under subjugation. Some of it, even there is a inflict pain, but I think a huge part of it is this the thing about power. Right? Some people, they will have the pain stuff, and that's why they go into BDSM. But that's not me. All right. Um, um, yeah, this is not really me, but yeah, maybe there's a little bit of inflict pain, right? I think to think about it, yes, there's a bit of, like, you want to give it good, and it's like you want to dominion, and there's more power thing, and you you want the other side to, yeah, when power comes, it's like you want the other side to be subservient and to be enslaved, or those kind of thing. I'm not really into BDSM, but I get it. There's this thing about power play that's associated with sex, and of course, there's a lot of physical attraction, right? So a lot of it is really about physical attraction, and of course, physical needs, and I don't deny it, right? Physical needs, and all these are all quite mental, and it also affects our values. Somewhere in us, somewhere in me, all right, wanted to be the powerful male or whatever, right? And inflict pain, be in a position of power, subjugate the other party. Now, this is not to say that there's no room for love. Now, there's a lot of it here, and of course, yes, there is love, right? There is love. Yet, a huge part of the sex thing that I used to have, right, the sexual arousal, that it used to be what I would say now, I would term is a little bit dark. If I were to be honest, it's a little bit dark. Now, after going through years of spirituality, whereby I'm working on healing myself, cleansing, right, on self improvement, and working in the direction of values, and not and to be less and less attached, right? And I'll be, for example, I'll be less attached to the body, um, to, yeah, sometimes to lust even, right? So now what happened was, my attitude towards sex and sexual arousal changed, and it changed quite significantly, because I no longer view sex as a way, whereby I pleasure myself. Of course, there's a lot of this is about pleasure. right? Pleasure with all these things, that was the old me. But now, what will happen after spirituality is all these kind of things get thrown out the window. You know, I dare say, you know, a huge part of this is thrown out the window. Um, Now, I be honest, right? Sex can still be pleasurable and it's still a physical need, but a lot of this has thrown out of the window. So, um, I find myself very changed when it comes to sex. I don't feel that, you know, pardon my all these pauses. You know, it is a, you know, I would like to talk about it, but I think this is not the kind of things that most people talk about it openly. And now, so basically, when all these things were cleansed and healed, or I worked on them and they're no longer part of me, I know, you know, I notice I'm not the old me anymore. I don't look at women in a sexual manner the way I would have long time ago, and my sexual thoughts are very different. The way I get aroused is very different. It's not so much of this type of things anymore, and it made me realize that the old me, I was a lot more sexual because I had a lot of this in me, a lot. I had a lot of this type of, and these things didn't actually come, didn't it was something that was acquired. It was not something that's innate. It was not something that's inborn. It was something that was acquired and acquired through, for example, porn, or long time ago, the sexual magazines, Playboy, what have you, Penthouse. Those I think are no longer there right now. So when all these are very much reduced, right? As they will reduce, I find that my sexual desire reduced because a lot of my old sexual desire were based on this. And the way I get attracted, the way I evaluate women are very different. It's very different. I can be very objective. I mean, it can be a very beautiful woman, but it's just physical beauty, and it doesn't it just doesn't stir me, right? It doesn't stir me the way that it would have long time ago. So all these things really change, and the sexual desire has dropped, especially the sexual desire that is derived from this. Instead, it's more about love. It's more about appreciating the other partner, all right, and really feeling the love and wanting to be more of now it's more about union, that kind of thing. So the journey has really changed. So just to be complete, all right, just to be complete, I want to clarify. Okay, I think there are people who are going to ask, in sex and spirituality, right? They talk about tantra or tantric sex, right? So first of all, I will just share that um, I don't engage in this. Okay, I never learned this and I don't engage in this, so I am no way qualified to talk about this. The only thing I can make a comment on about this is, I do notice about the people who are interested in tantra or tantric sex, right? Or tantric sex, and some people who teach it. I do notice that I do notice they still have part of this. They still have part of this, and there's some fascination, and so maybe that's why I can tell that there's some of this. And whereas for my part, and I never go into this, and having cleared all this, you know, and I don't have fascination about this type of stuff because I'm more about love and union, and yes, there's still physical needs, and there's still you still derive pleasure, right? I'm not a robot. sex. So well, anyway, because I don't do tantric sex, so I don't know what tantric sex is like. I've read about it. It's supposed to be very wonderful. It's also about union and all that. So I can't comment too much on this. All right. So my main comment actually that I really want to make is about this point. And privately, some people have asked me about this, and because they are also on similar spiritual path, they ask me because they find that this is happening to them too. All right, as they work on themselves, um, maybe they didn't really realize this part. All right, they come to me that if they're really spiritual, they come to realize that their sexual desires dropped, or their sexual desires are lowered. So yeah. So they asked me privately, and whether it's like that for me. Now, I want to clarify on the other point. Now, some people, when it comes to spirituality, especially when they go from the old, from religious point of view, some people will see sex as something dirty. All right. Some people, maybe due to certain religious views, or maybe not religious, or maybe it's just very traditional views or very restrictive views, right? And they go on a certain spiritual path whereby they will label sex as something dirty. All right, they will label sex as something dirty, or they are forced to be celibate, right? They are forced to be celibate, and they have to suppress their sexual desires. All right, they have to suppress their sexual desires. They're forced to be celibate, and they're forced to, on the surface, kind of view sex as something dirty. Now, I think we see that a lot in society. All right, you see that in certain religions, right? Certain religious figures of authority that were found to sexually abuse young children, for example. All these make headlines, right? Or some people who are religious leaders who are supposed to be celibate, but actually they are not, and they're having sexual liaisons, and it's discovered, and all these things makes a huge mess. And some of these people, when they are discovered, they realize that, hey, these people are supposed to be celibate, but the kind of double life they live sexually is even worse than what normal people do, like normal household people do. So my comment on this is, when we're talking about spirituality, all these things, it need to be something that's I feel that it's best when it's voluntary. All right. So in my case, I voluntarily want to be a better person and working on to better myself and to heal myself and to heal the dark parts of me that maybe I want to subjugate people, inflict pain on others, and all this I willingly let go. All right, I willingly drop. But when it comes to the other side, all right, whereby it is being forced, right? Some people find it very difficult to let go, and instead their dark side rises because they may have some resentment, all right, and I think the spiritual path needs to. I think it's better for a spiritual path that is very voluntary, that's very focused on self improvement, all right, self improvement and healing and cleansing, the kind of thing that's internal, and so that all this will go away by its own, and then people will become more. The religious or spiritual people will be more willing to become celibate or less sexually active. I think it is something that will happen, and if they are they are having if they can be married like us, Cordelia and I, and have a normal household life, right? Sex still goes on, but it will be without these darker aspects. All right, it will be without the darker aspects. This is what I would like to share with everyone. So most of the sharing is done, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And let me go through the chat. Evan saying, yeah, testosterone hormone. can still on spiritual path. Wait, let me see. Okay, Evan said, isn't it normal men need to ejaculate 21 times in a month to prevent prostate cancer? Wow, I have no knowledge of that. If that's the number needed to prevent prostate cancer, then I'm definitely going to get prostate cancer. Okay, I'm nowhere near that number. All right. So I even say, yeah, testosterone hormone can still on spiritual path concurrently practice copulation. Yeah, why not? I mean, I'm just sharing, like, me and Cordelia, we are married and we have a household kind of life. Can we conclude a guru who abused women is a fake guru as read on papers? Um, I would, I wouldn't go to the extreme to say the guru is a fake guru. I would say that the guru can still be a real guru probably, but the guru didn't choose to work on certain aspects of himself, didn't work on the self improvement, which especially of this type of nature, that would lead to more healthy perspective and healthy practices of sex, or towards celibacy, right? So the yeah, if someone becomes a very powerful person, very influential, and if they're not really working on themselves, power is a huge temptation. All right, and without working on all this, then it's very easy to go down the slippery slope, the dark path, and subject to lust, power, greed, and all that. So and yeah, naturally those will be against the spirit of what is spiritual, what is a good person. All right, so yeah. Someone is asking, Taoists believe that if a man can control ejaculate and not ejaculate, the jing can be used to nourish own body and feed the brain. What are your thoughts on this? All right, I did experiments. So Taoist, so there's this Taoist Qigong thing. All right, Taoist Qigong thing. All right, there are a few things. So this person is sharing that if you do not ejaculate, the jing or the essence can be used to nourish the own body and feed the brain. Um, Actually, what they are trying to say, so in Taoist Qigong, or spiritual energy practices, right? There are few different levels of energy. There is so there is Jing, there's Qi, there's Shen. Right? Jing is translated as essence. All right. Qi is a kind of very physical energy, and Shen is more a spiritual energy. So, and this Jing essence Jing is also related to sperm. All right. So it believed in the Taoist practices, energy and qigong practices, that if you can have sex, but you can have sex and have an orgasm. For the men, they can have orgasm without ejaculation, and they have techniques to try and prevent the ejaculation of the sperm, because sperm is also jing, right? So that's one of the way, and you conserve your energy. So it's important to conserve your energy, conserve your jing, your sperm. There are also practices whereby what they do is they use the Taoist. What they do is they take the sexual energy. So you can take sexual energy, and you can actually transmute it into spiritual energy. And this is something that I've tried. I've never tried this. I mean, I I did read about it, and I've learned some methods of how to do the Taoist way of have sex but without ejaculation. But, I learned it, but I never. I never really I never really do it because I'm in proper relationship, and I'm married and want to have children kind of thing. So I never practice that. But what I did practice is to use the sexual energy and change it to spiritual energy. And this someone said bring it to the brain. Yeah, so it's actually not just bring it to the brain. So you bring it to your head and to certain parts, energy centers, and it gets converted into spiritual energy. And yes, that part works. So the part whereby I don't ejaculate, I can't comment on that because I never practice it. But I read about people who do. The only thing is this: for those people who do, I noticed that their own sexual energy and with all these darker sides are still pretty much very strong on them. And those that I do know who promote this art, right? Not ejaculating and all this Taoist sexual qigong art, and those of you who know, I do read energy. I can sense a person's energy, read a person's energy. These people who practice this and who teach this, I do notice that most of them, they still have um, this kind of energy within them. So it's a different cultivation. But for myself, because I'm on this being a good person, working on values, healing and cleansing, naturally I managed to reduce a lot of this type of darkness, and the sexual libido, sexual arousal due to this is very much reduced. But the people who may be focusing on this, if they do not work on this, they will still have it, and they will still want to, you know, I think the sexual arousal and still incorporate a lot of this. But I don't know whether you all agree. But if please do evaluate yourself whether you have this type of things at play. This is for me, all right. I think there are other people, right, who I mean, some people like. I mean, I'm a normal guy, and some people like they go BDSM or they settle, sadism or masochism, whereby they want pain to be inflicted on them, or they want to be the sexual slave. It's a real mess, but it's all pretty dark over here. Okay, so very good question. Now Edwin. Edwin said Buddha also married and later on went on spiritual path. Then ha ha ha, people need rewiring, laugh out loud on sex is dirty. So let me clarify, all right? Sex is not dirty. I really don't think sex is dirty, but all these are usually acquired. Can I say this? This problem is acquired, right? All these problems are acquired. That means they are not innate. We didn't learn it. We didn't. No, it's not inborn, right? We learn it, and it's influenced from usually, I think in society, because of all the porn and exposure to all this kind of stuff, that you acquire this. Otherwise, you don't have it. And yes, for some people, if they have self-confidence issues, they may acquire some of this and add on to their self-confidence issues. They may feel like they want to be a slave, or they want to be the one who enslave others. So it's something that can get very complicated. Okay. So Coral, hi Kat, not sure if you have any feedback from women and their sexual experiences. What if in general someone has high libido, is comfortable in their sexuality and is on the spiritual path? All right. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. All right, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, my observation is this is what I noticed, and for someone who I mean, I meditate and I practice awareness and mindfulness. I became very aware of my shift in sexual arousal and sexuality because of this. I became very aware and very mindful, and I'm not sure how many people are aware and mindful of this. So, and I do watch about other teachers or other people who talk about sex and spirituality, and I, for a good part, a lot of them, they still have this. I can sense it. I can pick it up. And I mean, there are a lot of sex gurus. For example, I watched some Netflix program, and talking about sex gurus, and there was one lady, and she was teaching people how to be more comfortable in their own skin and have sex, but and how to attract mates and everything. But her energy was so sexual, and there's a lot of these elements, these dark elements, and I could really sense it that when I was watching Netflix, the program on her, I could feel her energy um, affecting me, stirring me even, right? But I could recognize that it's not me. It's not me. These energies are coming from her, and just by watching her, her energies of sexuality and these aspects of the darkness is so strong that it can affect people. So, um, so now it's okay for people to have high sexual libido. All right. My question is, if they're really on spirituality, have they developed some degree of awareness, mindfulness? And can I say also, you need to, there needs to be truth and honesty. Can you have some introspection? Look within yourself, right? And behind your sexual desires, do you evaluate it? So I'm just sharing that I've done my evaluation, right? I've done my inner work, and I'm sharing this with you all because there are people who pull me aside to ask me this um, sexually now to ask me these sexual questions. Now this is not a judgment. I'm not saying outright that it's not okay to have libido. Now it is, because some people have higher sexual needs. Right? Some people do have higher sexual needs, and I agree. Right? And it could be something that's biological. The only thing is, other than this, the question is, do you have all this, or is it something that's really more pure? And yes, we all derive pleasure, and there's nothing wrong with pleasure because we do have senses. It's just that it's not too good if you are very attached to it, right? Because everyone ages and you cannot be attached to it. I mean, your body will deteriorate. How long can you have good sex and all that? How long can you maintain? For guys, your erection. For ladies, how long can you maintain your sexuality, your sexual beauty and attraction, right? Everything is limited. We are all bound by constraints of our physical body, and our body does create physical needs. So yeah, I'm not making a judgment, so I'm just sharing. If a person is really spiritual, right, and spiritual and with supposedly awareness, mindfulness, and practice of truth, then it's good to take a look at this thing here when we're talking about sexual arousal, sexual desires, and so on. They say, wow, fantastic toast kung fu. And El Perro Loco, I've definitely noticed a correlation between too much sex and brain fog. Yeah, actually, if you, I can also share that, from energy qigong perspective, if you do have a lot of sex, you will lower it will affect all these different energies. It will affect all these different energies. Your jing, of course, you lose your sperm, your qi will go down. You do use a lot of qi energy in your body, and of course, depending on your shen, right? Shen is spiritual energy. So if you are very, if your sex is very dark kind of thing, it will affect your spiritual energy. Your pure spiritual energy will not be so pure anymore. Coral said, we also share here, but I've been in the BDSM scene and have found it quite healing to confront some conflicts within myself that I otherwise would not have been able to in a conventional way. Power play is definitely a part of this, but consent and respect is a golden rule for those in the community. I find that this community is actually more responsible when it comes to sex. I found that it actually helped me while in my spiritual path, but I'm wondering how this is different for women. Yeah, so I'm not into BDSM, all right, and I am quite a normal, heterosexual kind of guy with you know um, with nothing extreme on my sexual taste, right? I've watched BDSM porn, and it's not my kind of thing. All right, so I guess for some people it is there. If you ask me, what I think is important for anyone who's on the spiritual path is, you know, being a good person. And this thing, you know, when we are not um, even when we are not meditating, we need to have some kind of awareness and mindfulness, truth and honesty about how are we going through the everyday things in life, and sex is one of them. So I do a lot of introspection, and I do analyze myself, so you know, with awareness and mindfulness. And this is what I really realized. And when it hit upon me, it's like, wow, you know, yeah, it, you know, when I really go into introspection of how I've changed sexually, I noticed this, and this came out, and I really noticed that, you know, all the work that I've done into healing and cleansing and self-improvement did improve me, and it had an effect on this side, on my sexual life. But it's because a lot of these dark things were cleansed or healed, right? The parts of myself, for example, for for example, I mean, I'm just being honest here, right? So I mean, despite you know, I was reasonably a successful guy at whatever age I thought I was decent, I still had a lot of self-confidence and self-esteem issues, right? And these self-confidence, self-esteem issues did feed right into my porn taste or sexual side, whereby, you know, it feed into the power play, right? And why, you know, I would get sexually aroused in the old me would get sexually aroused if, you know, there's power play there, because it's to compensate for my own low self-esteem. And as I heal my own low self-esteem and cleanse and go down to the root of all my inner issues, you know, all those things are healed, and then this thing no longer is no longer that relevant anymore. All right. So again, someone say Taoists believe that gene can also be transferred during sex from other partner, from male to female. Does it mean it's possible for the other partner to take another person's energy during sex? Yes, taking energy during sex is very normal, and usually it's the female who receives the energy from the male, right? And the energy is supposed to go on to fertilize the egg, and, you know, um, for the baby, right? That's going to be born eventually. And I've had different clients and students. Although I'm not involved in such activities, right? I am privy to the fact that there are people who use sex to take energy from people, right? And even use meditation to take energy from people, and using energy practices. So yes, it's possible to take another person's energy during sex. And here I would like to highlight something. So danger. All right. So there is this thing. Yeah. So now I've also experienced this, and I've got clients and students experience this. So you have dream sex, and dream sex that led to loss of energy. All right, dream sex that led to loss of energy. So this is something possible. What happens is, some people, they may astral travel, or they may be entities, evil spirits that approach you in a dream. You know, some people talk about succubus, incubus, that kind of thing. So yeah, they can be evil spirits that come to you in a dream, and they have sex with you, and they take away your energy. So these type of things do happen, and it's a real thing, right? Done by evil spirits and even by people. At least, again, lust is on the 10. It's in 10 dark side: pride, greed, anger, lust, delusion, jealousy, negativity, selfishness, hatred, and ego. It is important to reduce this negative to a minimum. Yeah, yeah, I would generally agree, right? We do have some kind of physical needs and lust kind of thing that is you know, maybe come from the animal within us, due to evolution, right? We evolved from animals, and that's something that is due to physical needs, the pheromones, the testosterone hormone, and so on, right? So there's still some physical part, but otherwise that will contribute to the lust, and that cannot be totally eradicated. What I would recommend that we be more aware of is all these other dark side stuff that contributes to the negative or that kind of lust. So Cora is asking, but why is sexual energy dark? I'm quite honest about my sexuality and desires, pleasures. Now, to clarify, sexual energy is not dark. All right, sexual energy is not dark. Now, everything rise from intent. Right, rise from intent. A key thing, right, is going to be intent. Your intent, right, plus your values will determine the energy, whether is it dark or more light. Now, the problem I faced in the past, the old me, a lot of the values it was dark because of all these things. And you know, so these values is something that is very key. My values is very key because my values were a bit more dark. This is power play and all this whatever thing. That's why the energy came out dark. If you if all these are lessened, and then what you have is love, right? If you have more of love, and of course of union. Wanting to be union to be one with your partner is a very wonderful thing. I I I I get a for me I get a I get pleasure, right? I can get sexual pleasure from a feeling of union with with Cordelia, right? And there is the physical union, the sexual act, but for me, there's this heart union, this energy union that makes the orgasm, all right, the orgasm different. That makes this whole sexual experience different, and that energy is more light. It's not dark, but a lot of us have these dark sides, and I'm pointing out the old me, right? The subjugation, the power play, the inflict play, and that makes the energy dark. So sexual energy is not really dark, right? It depends what you bring, what are the values you bring, what is the intent that you bring. It will ultimately, it will decide the kind of energy that comes out, right? I hope to be able to clarify that. Edwin say people with high Venus mount on palm is highly sexual. All right, so Edwin is into palmistry. I'm not so into it. So Cassandra says, super thank you, Kat. Appreciate the sharing. And Stefan says, I guess great power is to control yourself. As everything else, if you let thing control you, then you are a slave. If you control that thing, you are the boss. Thing I didn't know is that when you have sex with someone who got entities around or dark things, could be transferred to you and play with your mind. Yes. So so this is this on the other side of spirituality and the kind of work that we do, helping people with evil spirits. If you do have sex with people who have evil spirits and all that, so it's not just dream sex. Sex with them can result in loss of energy because evil spirits can take energy from people, and it can make it can evil spirits can trigger and exaggerate and magnify all these dark forces, dark influences, dark dark tendencies in a person. So what if you don't talk about the spirit side, I would say if you were to be very layman, to be very practical, it's good to have some kind of awareness and mindfulness and introspection, right? Be truthful and honest about what goes on in your mind. when you're having sex, or when you're getting aroused, or when you're masturbating and you're looking for sexual relief. What makes you sexually excited and aroused? What are the values behind, and can maybe you can use part of this talk to evaluate yourself, right? I'm being very honest with you. This was the old me, and I'm very different now. I look at women very differently. It's I can still admire beauty, but I don't. I'm not like the old me would get a lot more, will have a lot more thoughts. And I remember when I was young, I would read a lot of different stuff and magazines and whatever. And they always like to say that men can't stop thinking about sex and all that. And I'm not sure whether they acquire that kind of thing, but now I'm no longer like that. And to think about those articles, I'm not sure about other people, right? Because I'm not other people, but if what those articles say is true, then it seems like a lot of men, they are always looking at sexually attractive women and thinking about having sex with them, right? And but that typically comes out of this, and I used to have that. And because now I've gotten rid of this, the way, when I look at women, I can really talk to them without my mind playing some kind of funny sexual fantasy scenario. So spirituality done right, in or at least in the way we do it, right, about healing, cleansing, values, non-attachment, right, and cultivating awareness and mindfulness, I think it will really make us become a much better person. All right. So, any more last minute questions before we call it a night or a day? All right. If not, thank you everyone for joining me. I hope my sharing is good enough. I'm not saying I'm the most sexually experienced person, nor I'm not, and neither am I saying I'm the most spiritual person, but to share where I am on my path and what I have realized through my practice. All right. Thank you for having me. And if you feel this talk has benefited you, please do consider making a donation to support our free donation basis online activities. If you cannot afford it, right, it's free for you all, and I'm happy to see you all again. Okay, so thank you. Have a good day, good night, and goodbye.